Yeah. Well, today's conversation, we're going to be talking about what we're seeing in national headline news, whether it's a buyer's market, seller's market. What's the difference? How do we define that? Not how do we define that, but how does the market define that?
Yeah. I mean, this was actually brought up, maybe about a month ago. I had a family member of mine who sent me this news article. And it was a CNN article, talking from a national perspective that, the United States is moving ultimately into a buyer's market. We're seeing an influx of buyers, a lack of sellers, in numbers that we haven't seen since 2013. So just as we were coming out of the residential market recession.
Yeah.
And so it got me kind of curious because from the surface, just interacting with clients around here, I didn't really feel that or notice that. There's definitely adjustments taking place in the market, but I wouldn't say that it's a buyer's market at all. And so I started to kind of dig in a little bit more and kind of compare numbers here locally. So MLS, we've got an infinite amount of resources kind of at our disposal. And I started looking up the metro market, so Minneapolis, kind of the 7-county area around Minneapolis, St. Paul. And then to get a little bit closer west, I look at Wright County and then Buffalo specific, and kind of took a snapshot on, the month supply. So everybody kind of talks about month supply, and that's an indicator of...
Yeah, so I'm going to stop you right there. Yeah. The way the market decides what a buyer's market versus a seller's market has to do with the month supply. And that's the tipping point, about 4 months.
Yep.
Meaning if everything on the market sold, or that's on the market right now, and we had no new listings, it would take about 4 months to sell all of the available property. Anything less is a seller's market. Yep. Anything more is a buyer's market, and 4 months is about a balanced market.
Correct. So, looking at the larger metro area, and I just went back basically the last 90 days and kind of seen what the market has done, 120 days. And what was interesting is the metro market and even Wright County is trending that direction, but both of them are at about a 3-month supply. So that supply is going up. When I last pulled stats back in March, we were at, it was like 4.5 month supply at that point, and it was starting to drop. And I think it had even dropped down to about a 2-month supply, and now it's starting to creep back up. Mm-hmm. But Buffalo specific, we're still hovering right around 2 months. Last time I looked, we were at 2 months. The highest that I saw was back in March. We were at about a 3.25 month supply. So we never really hit that 4-month supply mark, but we're actually trending downwards, which again is counterintuitive to what these national headlines are saying. So one of the blog followers that I like to read from is a group called Deeper Pockets, and I was kind of reading through some of the stats, which they had pulled from, I believe it was Redfin, but they had kind of looked at, out of the 50 largest metro cities around the United States, 30 of them are in a buyer's market, meaning they go by the percentage difference of sellers on the market versus buyers on the market. So their threshold is, if there's 10% more buyers than sellers, it's indicative of a buyer's market. Mm-hmm. The inverse of that, it's indicative of a seller's market. So you've got 30 that are percentage-wise in a buyer's market. You've got about a dozen of them that are in a balanced market, and then you've got about 7 of them that are a seller's market. Minneapolis is one of those metro areas that's identified as a balanced market. Our month supply, and that's kind of what we're seeing. So what does that mean to the buyers and sellers that we work with? Yeah. Because again, it started with an article that was sent to me. I've had numerous conversations. People are asking, is it a buyer's market? Or, obviously everybody gets the question, what is the real estate market like? And I'm very hesitant to say that, it's a buyer's market, but buyers have more power right now than they did 6 months ago, a year ago. So part of that is, again, looking at the numbers, everything is in sectors, price point ranges. Some market sectors are more active than others.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're seeing out there, but anything 375, 400,000 and under is pretty active.
Right.
Short days on market. Some of them are still seeing multiple offers. So that's where the activity is taking place.
Yeah. So how I answer that question, because it comes up all the time. I said, if you're a real estate agent and you're doing any type of business, you can't avoid this question. Like one, when people find out, they're always curious about it. And it's our job, give them an answer, at least be educated on the answer. Segmented is how I kind of answer that. Yep. I said, usually people are most interested in how it affects them. They don't really care about the entire market. It's usually, how much is my house worth? If we were to buy or to sell, blah, 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 blah.
Correct.
When I take a look at that is entry-level homes, still super strong. Even high-end homes, still super strong. But it's that mid-market, that step-up home, that price point between, $400,000 and $700,000, give or take a little bit on the top end there.
Yep.
That's still pretty strained. I would consider that subsector market of the West Metro here very much a buyer's market. I think that the biggest winner in the market right now is somebody financially stable enough to sell their entry-level home because they're going to get a really good price for it, that maybe bought it 10 to 12 years ago, even 6 years ago, fantastic equity position in an increase, take the win. And then they can actually afford that step-up home, and it's almost nearly all upgrades, So, yes, the interest rate, it's going to bite you. You're going to feel sticker shock when it comes to my payments. What now? Yep. I was used to my, $125,000 mortgage, at 3%. Now, we're going to take even a $250,000 or a $300,000 mortgage, but you got to remember, you're also putting down $200,000 or $300,000 in the equity that you gained from when you purchased. So I say it's very, very segmented. Now, I read through those articles, and they said where most of the buyers markets are, think warm.
Yep.
Miami, so Miami, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Austin, Texas, Jacksonville, Florida, Tampa, Phoenix, Vegas, Orlando, and Nashville.
Yep.
So those are ones in sellers market. And I would say maybe overinflated, from the COVID years. Now let's go back. I remember seeing some stats, and this was like at the peak of the market as far as COVID craziness goes. And it was like we had 3 weeks of inventory, kind of like almost nationwide, which is like absurdly low. Like 3 weeks, everything would be gone, like across the country.
Which is why you put your house on the market and you had 20 showings the first day.
Yeah. It's not which house did we put a market or an offer on. It's, we put an offer on all of them and we got one of them.
Correct.
And that's kind of how it was. So when we're talking about reading some of these national headline news, we had a teacher. I don't know if you remember this from Mr. Erickson. If it bleeds, it leads.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Now we were
Mass
in ninth
media.
grade when 9/11 happened. But it was like you hear all these negative things and people click on it saying, "Oh my goodness, the sky's falling." But really, nationally, if you don't have a house in Nashville, who cares?
Correct.
It doesn't really matter to you. It's what's happening in your current market. And that's why we preview everything, in our market where we primarily work. And we take a look at how is this affecting, and then we're going to advise each seller differently based on which segment of the market they're in. It's not a one size fits all. So I would say just be very careful when you're reading those national headlines. They like to pop up on the push notifications,
Correct.
Mortgage interest rates, rise, 0.17%, and, values drop 0.1%. Well, it's nearly an impossible number to know that actually makes a significant difference because the real estate market in general in itself is a very slow moving thing. If you picture a ship, you can't turn that around right away. You've got to take a look at 90, 180, 270 days ago to find that trend line of where things are going.
Correct.
So, and we're just not seeing those big drastic changes that I think a lot of people, call them being influenced by Instagrammers. They kind of hope that they can get a deal like their uncle did, bought a foreclosure back in 2009 or 10. They're not looking for that hockey stick nosedive. Correct. And quite honestly, you don't want to see that.
Nope.
Like, hey, you missed an opportunity back then because you were 4. Bummer. You don't want a massive correction in the real estate market because it really destabilizes a lot of things around a home purchase.
The economy in general. I mean, it's so integral to that. In that same article, there was a quote that stuck out with me. That seems really very, very real and relevant to, I would say, my immediate world and in discussions that I've had with sellers here. This was from the Redfin senior economist, Asad Khan. He goes, "The balance of power in the U.S. housing market has shifted towards buyers, but a lot of sellers have yet to see or accept the writing on the wall. Many are still holding out hope that their home is exceptional and will fetch top dollar. But as sellers see their homes sit longer on the market and notice fewer buyers coming through on tour, more of them will realize that the market has adjusted and reset their expectations accordingly." The reason why that stuck out is I've had very, very similar discussions with sellers of mine, getting them ready for the market. And again, going back to, the market works in segments. So I have a very different conversation with sellers whose house is 375 and under, because there's still a lot of competition. There's a lot of activity. You can be a little bit more aggressive entering the market with the price of your home there because the competition supports it. The market supports it. Anybody that's over that 400, 425 and up to about that 700, I have a very different conversation with them. And again, it's our job to understand what the market is doing as best as we can and advise, but ultimately it's our seller's decision on what they want to do. So in that middle range, I'm constantly saying, are you opposed? Are you looking, like, again, I think you've mentioned this before, you can have price, time, or convenience, but 2 of the 3. You can't have all 3. So if you're okay sitting on market, because again, in that price range, the average days on market is like 48, 50, somewhere in there. You can price yourself on the stronger side, but I'm telling you, you're going to be waiting, and the showings are going to be very intermittent. You'll have 2 or 3, and then you won't have any for a while. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we've been seeing. Or are you okay pricing more aggressively, meaning you're going to enter the market maybe 10 to 15,000 less than what you were initially anticipating, but you're going to have activity. You're going to find that little pocket of buyers that are very active and they want your house, because that middle range, those buyers are very finicky. I mean,
they expect the world, to be quite honest.
Correct.
And for whatever reason, I mean, they're I think in the negotiating a seat of strength in the negotiation part, and that's a great point of, at the end of the day, we don't set the prices. You don't set the price. I don't set the price. Ultimately, it's that buyer and seller agreeing.
Correct.
And how many times have you seen, hey, data supports that your house should sell for this, but maybe motivated John and Susie down the street, they said, hey, we need to get out because we've got another offer. We don't care if we sell for $15,000 or $20,000 less because we want it gone now.
Correct.
That also affects the house you're trying to sell, unfortunately. Yep. So you take the good with the good, the bad with the bad, and, everything in between. For that. So it's really managing that expectations. I think you had a really good point there. One thing when I thought reading this, and it was a CNN article and a Redfin one, and they kind of mentioned each other.
Correct.
And I think they copy and pasted the same information.
Yep, 100%.
You kind of have to remember what Redfin is also. It's a real estate company that wants to buy your house.
Correct.
So hey, doom and gloom. It's a buyer's market now. Yep. Hey, you should take our offer. So it's always kind of,
sell now.
Just take a step back. Whew.
Correct.
take a breath. I remember I had good friends. They sold to I don't remember exactly what company. It was one of the bigger companies, but they still needed to buy. I helped them buy.
Yep.
And I asked them, hey, can I take a look at your contract to make sure, hey, one, is this legit? And make sure there's nothing hidden in there. And I looked at it and said, this is a great offer. And this is when they're just trying to start to get into the market. This is now 8-9 years ago or so.
Yep.
When they, meaning these big conglomerate companies, trying to get in and buy a bunch of homes. But they still had the fees. They had all the fees tacked on top of it. But they actually paid a premium for the house. And I thought, well, I don't think you'd get that on the open market. You should take that, That was the best advice I could give them at that time. So I would always say, beware where the information's coming from. And if Mr. Erickson can leave us anything, it's always if it bleeds, it leads.
Correct.
Just have a real conversation about it, because what's happening, even 50 miles away might not be happening here.
Correct.
Well, we're blessed to have a bunch of lakes around us. When it comes to, Lakeshore should sell more. I mean, that's a piece of water. Yes, I agree. That is a piece of water. But Lake Sylvia is not Mink Lake.
Correct.
And vice versa. Like, it's different,
Correct.
and just know it. You have to know that difference,
Not all lakes are created equally.
Correct.
But to that point, in meeting with us or talking with us, you had mentioned we tour properties every single week. Every week, we're going around Buffalo, Monticello, primarily that area, but we're touring homes every single week to get a understanding of the market, see where houses are priced at, level of finishes, quality, the curb appeal, the location. There's so many factors that kind of go into that. But again, being a knowledgeable local agent, we're doing that to better prepare ourselves, and then it benefits our buyers and sellers because we can go through it and we've got a pretty good sense of what the market is doing right now, because not only are we touring them, but I know I do this. I'm sure you guys do it. I track a lot of the activity, the pending sales, the days on market, closed sales. Where did it finally close at? Like, was it close to the list price? Were there concessions made? Like, understanding what is the market doing? What are buyers gravitating towards? And what are sellers offering to get that buyer to commit? Because it's a moving target. And, again, the different sectors, there's more activity or less activity. And so, really trying to dial in, like, what is the market doing?
Yeah. Yep.
That way, when I'm sitting down with a prospective seller, I can give what I think is the best advice. And, where they go from there is ultimately up to them. And I'll explain that to them. But again, here's what I've been seeing. Here's what I've been studying. Here's what I've actually witnessed in the market right now.
Yeah, let's take this journey together.
Yep.
So, I think they're all good points. One, and I think this is maybe almost circling all the way to the point of have a trusted professional. Ideally, call us, northstarprorealty.com. Any one of our team members can help you. If you want to send us a message off this video, everything, it's just have that conversation. And it's non-obligation conversations. If you invite us over to have a more in-depth conversation specifically about your house, we can do that.
Correct.
And we're not going to make you sign anything except maybe agency disclosure, a
That we have
required
to do.
form to let you know
Yes.
that we're licensed real estate agents.
Yes.
But it's not going to be a listing contract or anything like that. And it's a good point to just have a really, put your thumb on the market of what's happening, test the temperature of.
Yeah.
Of
I mean, I'm always in favor of people, educating themselves or, working to get educated.
Getting educated. Yeah.
And we're happy to help you with that. I've got plenty of people who they're not actively looking to buy or sell right now, but they want to understand what their property is worth, because life happens. And sometimes, you can tell yourself, I'm going to be here forever. And 3 weeks later, life happens. And now I need to sell. I need to sell now.
Yeah.
And so it's just always being prepared,
Yeah.
I would say, at a minimum once a year, it'd be good to just reach out to a real estate agent, reach out to one of us and just say, hey, put something together and let me know what my house is worth.
Mhm.
I'm not looking to buy or sell, but just let me know what it is worth
It's
today.
nice to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that.
So, you remember when Terry McDonough used to be one of the senior VPs or whatever at Edina Realty?
Yep.
Super awesome guy. Absolutely just loved hearing him talk and just kind of, he says, next time you're with a seller, ask him, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what's the most important thing to you in this transaction? And he goes, just be quiet and let him answer. And sometimes it's not money. It's, I really need it to be easy. I want it quick, or I want the most money, so, but then that's the Venn diagram.
Correct.
And again, and that's what we strive for is just, it's catered to you. Yes. We're fulfilling what you need to see or what your expectations are. And are we the best fit for that too?
Correct.
So I always say, beware of the information that you're getting and just have a real local trusted professional in your corner, whether you're on the market or not.
Correct.
So, but you can always get a hold of us at northstarprorealty.com or just go ahead and send us a message. It's probably the easiest. Or 763-777-9089. Jeremy, this has been a great conversation.
You as well.
Looking forward to way more of them.
Take care.